G'day and welcome to this edition of the Armchair Selector. Jeremy Irvine in Melbourne. And with me tonight is my good friend Stephen Humphreys, Shumpty 77, the Queenslander of the year one day. Mate, how are you?
I'm excellent, thank you, mate. I can only wish I could be Queenslander of the year. That would do me.
Well, you're Queensland fan of the year because unlike about 4.5 million other of your fellow state people, you actually went to the first test to see Australia take out a decent old draw against South Africa. Let's have a chat about that tonight. That's the focus of this edition of the Armchair Selector. What was wrong with the crowds is my first question for you tonight, mate.
Look, I went 3 days. I went the first day, I sat in the rain and waited for a start on the Saturday, and I went the last day. It's just too early. That's problem number one. We're a month out of rugby league season, and all of a sudden we're playing a test. Historically, this game has been played in the last week in November. It was moved forward, obviously, to meet the requirements of what the South Africans wanted for the schedule, and we're left with we're left with the crowd that we got. Issue number two, starting it on the Friday, and I know it sounds like a little thing, but there are a lot of people up here who take Thursday off and go to the cricket. Me being one. And we saw that on Monday and the Tuesday when you had 4,500 and probably 3,500 in the ground. People just didn't take the day off to go and see the cricket like they ordinarily would have on the Thursday.
Okay.
Because it's so early and because of that that time change, you've ended up with no school kids because school holidays haven't started, and ordinarily you would have had that. Grade cricket's still going, so you would have had people playing grade cricket on the Saturday if you had no rain. So I think timing's a big issue.
Okay.
I also think it now costs a lot of money to go.
Yeah, not cheap to get in, is it?
No, I mean, look, my ticket was $65 to get in on day one, and I made a choice to get a gold ticket, and I was happy to pay that. But everyone has a little bit less discretionary spend these days, and $65 to go and watch a game of cricket when you add in the cost of food and beverage is probably just a bit too much. So I think it was a combination of things. It was nearly a perfect storm of issues that led to a bad crowd, and it was a bad crowd. We can't sugarcoat that. No,
it looked pretty sparse down here watching it from the TV perspective. Let's have a chat about what happened on field, and you wrote a really good piece. Oh, you wrote a number of really good pieces over the course of the test. One was about the crowds, and another one was about how you thought some of the players went. So, what are some of the highlights for you in terms of what actually happened on field? The Saturday washout notwithstanding, which was just unfortunate, I guess.
I mean, the highlights really come from the batsmen. It was an honour and a privilege to watch Amla and Callis in concert on day one. The Australian fan in me hated it, but the cricket fan in me loved it.
Nice.
I loved watching Ed Cowan. I saw that a little bit outside of the ground, so I was listening on the radio and watching on TV. And yet again, the captain. We all kind of wrote him off a year ago, and 3 double centuries in 12 months is just phenomenal. So the bat really dominated the ball, and all of my highlights come from the batting.
Okay. And in terms of what you saw with some of the Australians, I mean, how did Rob Quine only got 9, and but how did he look in terms of just his general application when you were there?
Oh, look, mate, he got thrown the ball. He's a bloke who's taken 3 first-class wickets at 150 and barely bowled in the last year of first-class cricket. He bowled 7 overs on day one. He was excellent in the gully. You've got to say his application to the cause when we were in the field was fantastic. He got out to a 20-20 shot.
Yeah, it looked pretty ugly.
There was a lot of, the usual Channel 9 crap around. He was so unlucky. You don't hit the ball in the air. When your team's 1 for 30, chasing 450 in the first innings, you don't hit that shot if you're a true test number 3. So I think the jury's out. I think I rated him a 5 out of 10. In my player ratings, and part of that was because of what he showed in the field. I hope he gets another go because he's done what I would like players to have to do which has had a shield or a first class apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah. I wonder if people like Quiney actually will go on like Cowan has in this test and actually find themselves with a bit of confidence to go, you know what, I can actually cut it at this level, and I hope he does, because it seems that we write, not you and I per se, but it seems that sometimes we write batsmen off, particularly, you know, if they don't go out and score a glut of runs early on in their test career. And, you know, 9 is not going to set the world on fire either. Mind you, it took Ed Cowan seven digs to get 136 before he essentially ran himself out by backing up at the end of at the other end to Clark. So, what are the South Africans like in terms? I mean, is Amla as good in person as he looks on the TV? Because I was like, I mean, I hope Australia belt the crap out of these guys. And if Peter Miller's listening, I'd actually did use a swear word then. So, but I mean, are these South Africans as good as they look? I mean, Amla looks just an incredible batsman.
Oh, look, obviously when you're sitting up in row 71, in section 70 run row it's a bit hard, but there just was a calm about them. You know, he come out after Smith was gone for 10, and he just looked calm. He didn't look like anything flustered him.
Yep.
You know, I think you put him and Callis together, and there was a very good piece written, I can't remember who the author was, during the course of this week, about how Callis's batting has gone up when he bats with Amla. You know, they just seem to complement each other. They bat well together. I made a comment that I thought Mike Hussey had the purest cover drive in the game, and I'll tell you what, Amlar's not far away from that. His technique looks terrible in theory, and you would never put that in a book to coach kids how to bat. But geez, he gets results, and he just has this calm about him that I think's fantastic.
Yeah, look, it was beautiful to watch him, and as I said, you know, as a cricket fan, it was almost like you were. In one way, I was kind of having part of me going, I hope he does well, because it was just a delight to watch. And maybe I'm getting a bit soft in my old age. Okay, let's wrap this up from your perspective. What was the hero and what was the villain? We're going to have a hero and villain question here for you, mate. So another easy half-tracker. The hero?
Very easy for me. Half-tracker's Ed Cowan.
Yep.
Under pressure, underappreciated, did the job that you expect from a test match opener.
Great. And the villain?
The villain was the Gabba wicket. 2 years out of 3, we've seen an innocuous track that basically gave nothing to the bowlers. I was having memories of Australia v England in 2010 again while Australia was batting, and you know, the Gabba wicket was my villain. And I know we had a day under covers, but the wicket made it impossible for a result, in my view.
Okay. And the rain.
I'll turn it around on to you now. Who are your hero and your villain?
Oh, look, my heart says there's Ed Cowan, but, you know, I mean, I've got Ed Cowan fan tattooed across my head. Look, I think Clark actually got us out of... I mean, Clark and Hussey and Cowan did, I think, but I've got 2 heroes. The first was watching Amla batting. I just thought that was... From a cricket fan's perspective, watching him batting, I was sitting back on the weekend going, by God, this guy can just, you know, it was just a joy to watch him bat. And unfortunately, for those of us who don't have pay TV, we don't get to see the South Africans all that too often down here. So I thought, you know, I've got 2, him and then Clark. I mean, another double. He just didn't look like he was going to get out, and he didn't. Mind you, Cowan didn't look like he was going to get out either until he backed up too far down the other end. But my villain, I've got 2 villains. The villain I have in Brisbane was your weather on the Saturday, because I reckon we probably would have got a result. But I didn't actually ever thought it rained in Queensland, mate.
Well, look, it doesn't. We've been complaining that it's been so dry.
Right.
And I actually got stuck at South Brisbane Station waiting for a shower to pass, and ended up sitting there for 90 minutes on the Saturday. So, yeah, look, when it rains, mate, and we copped it.
Tropical, beautiful Queensland, and of course we haven't forgotten the floods and all those horrible things that happened there with Brisbane and Ipswich and everything. And look, my other villain, I wrote a piece about this the other day, and it's the first time I've probably got stuck into anyone in a long time, and I really should thank Peter Miller for talking me down from writing a more brutal piece. And I just think Greg Ritchie's a prat. And, to use a Barry Cassidy term when he's describing some poor behaviour, I just thought Ritchie's quoted comments in The Age, and I'm sure they were up in the Queensland Press the other day, and I'm not anti-Greg Ritchie per se, but I just thought, mate, if you don't need to shoot your bloody trap off, so shut up. And it does the game no benefit at all. And it was interesting this afternoon, and we're talking on Wednesday evening, that apparently that, and I stand to be corrected, but I saw a report in the media, I think, that the Cricket South Africa were preparing to make a complaint about some of his comments. So, Mahatma Coat was funny never, and it was funny never back in the 80s, and it was probably funny never back in the 1880s. And, I don't like getting up on the soapbox, and it was the first time I have in a long time, and probably the first time in 8 months that Armchair Blog's been on. But, you don't need idiots like that running around, and I'm glad that the Cricket Australia have distanced themselves from him, and I'm particularly glad the Sackers over in Adelaide have said, no, we don't want you at our next gig. So,
I guess I'll weigh into that. There's two issues. You don't say what he said in the first place.
Yep.
That's point number one. That's a given. When you're called out on it, you don't say, well, I've been doing it for 500 speeches. Why is it a problem now? You apologise.
Yes.
It's very simple. I'm not going to make a statement at all about the comments that he made, because you just simply don't make them. But what you do when you are called out is that you do apologise, and you do realise that what you've said is something that's wrong. And the fact of the matter is, it is wrong. And whether or not you've said it one time, or you've said it 500 times, or you've said it 5,000 times, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
You still apologise.
Yep. So take it from us, Greg. You've got an ex-political advisor and you're a lawyer by trade, Stephen.
Yeah.
Is that right? You're a lawyer by trade.
Well, I was a lawyer. I'm now an insolvency accountant. So
right. So
best of both worlds with me.
Take it from a couple of suits, Greg. You're a prat. Let's move on. Let's talk something happy before we go. Obviously, a draw at the end of the game. They called stumps early last night. Who do you think is going to be in a better frame of mind going to Adelaide?
I think both teams will take heart. I think the Australians will take heart from the perspective that they scored runs under pressure, and it wasn't just the captain, and it wasn't just Ricky Ponting. So I think Australia will take heart from that. I think South Africa will take heart from the fact that they can't be any worse with the ball. I think South Africa have a massive amount of improvement with the ball in them. I'm not sure Australia has as much improvement.
Yeah,
so,
whether or not Ben Hilfenhaus is in that 11,
I think Stark has to play. You and I talked about this before the game started, and we talked about it on Twitter. The non-selection of Stark is astonishing. He has to play in Adelaide. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, I think he will. He will. Mind you, Trent Copeland hurt himself this afternoon, I think, as 12th man, getting a helmet for Brad Haddon in the Shield.
Yeah. Yeah, rolled his ankle.
What is it with fast bowlers and injuries? We put him in cotton wool, and he goes and twists his ankle, and he's out for some umpteen weeks. Mate, really enjoyed your writing over the test. Great to actually, you're lucky to actually get to go to the test so early. We've got another month and a half, 6 weeks to go.
Yep.
And then we've got the Sri Lankans here in Melbourne. And I just wanted to note that before we go tonight, Stephen and I have been talking about 4 players to keep an eye out over this Australian summer. Phil Hughes, help me out here, Mitch Marsh, who we've talked about, Cooper from South Australia, and James Muirhead. And Muirhead's doing okay with the Vicks. So
yes, he is.
Mind you, Lewis Cameron on debut is getting some top order New South Welshmen out. And the only good New South Welshman is a bloke who gets a duck. So I did have a go to Queenslander then, mate.
Well, it's good, mate. I was waiting for a comment about Ben Cutting getting hit for 3 sixes in an over this afternoon. So I'll raise that. My man Cutting did get a bit of tap today from the Tasmanians. Good to see young Muirhead in the team for this game. And I'll tell you what, Chris Rogers, 19,000 first-class runs and the bloke's played one Test match. What are we doing?
Yeah.
You know, I tear my hair out when I look at his record, and I know we weren't going to talk about this today, and I know we're probably getting off tack a little bit, but geez, I tell you what. I don't know.
Well, if you're going to put an Australian 11 of blokes who haven't played many tests and probably should have played a hell of a lot more, you'd be probably putting Chris Rogers A at opener and B with a word captain next to it, because he's an exceptional player, and I'm biased because he plays for Paran, and I'm a Paran fan down here, and we've got a relationship with he's a good bloke, Chris Rogers, and a relationship with Paran Club, so he's a good bloke, and
how do you play 19? How do you make 19,000 first-class runs and play one Test match? I don't understand it.
Ask Andrew Hilditch. Anyway.
Yeah, true.
Look at that. I managed to get in Andrew Hilditch and not Chris Hartley, which I still reckon is a good bloke. Chris Hartley, and you're on Twitter. One of these days we'll have a Chris Hartley thought. I think Chris Hartley's a great guy, and he actually tweets on Twitter, which is good.
He does. He's really good.
Now, this is my last thing for you. It's my sledge for the night. People won't know because Stephen's too bloody humble. Kerry O'Keefe, who started being on Twitter the other day, has umpteen bloody thousands of followers. This young man, give us a wave, Stephen. You got to wave. Hi, Stephen. No, you got to talk so the camera goes to you.
Yeah, look,
I've met
Kerry O'Keefe does seem to follow me on Twitter.
Hey?
I don't know why. I don't know whether it was one of my expletive rants. He follows me on Twitter, and it was my greatest day on Twitter ever. I wish the great man had replied to me, but I love his commentary. I've read all of his books. He's a great story. Forget the jokes. Read the story of Kerry O'Keefe. It is an absolute ripper. And you never know, mate. I'll see. I'm desperate to get him to talk to him to put on your website, and I hope I do.
We'll see. Look, there can only be one comedian in the cricket world, and sure as hell not you. And you're funny, but it won't be us; it'll be him. So
no, it'll be him.
Great. So we've ticked off all the boxes. We've had a go at Greg Ritchie. We've mentioned Chris Hartley. We've had a talk about the Shield. Any final tips and observations with you this podcast?
Oh, look, Adelaide beckons. 9 days out, or 8 days out now. Question mark over Watson playing. Question mark over the bowling attack. Obviously, the South Africans will play Tahir. It really is another mouth-watering. It's a mouth-watering contest that's coming up. I don't know that we can get 20 wickets, which still bothers me. But it's going to be a great Test match, and I would probably say it's going to be a draw, and then it will be a winners take all in Perth, and won't that be good?
Yep, and then we can go away with a 3-zip thing would have been hideous. 2-1 would have been pretty bad, but I don't think it'll even get to that. We're not as bad. The Australian cricket team, despite day one being bloody awful with the bowling, the Australian cricket team is not as bad as people give it not credit for.
I agree.
That's why it's called a Test match.
I agree. I also think that we need to be alive to the fact that 3 Centurions may have spack-filled over some of the cracks in the top order, and we can't forget that they were 2 for 280 or whatever it was at stumps on day one on a Gabba day one wicket, which raises questions about the bowling. But I tell you what, we've got heaps of bowlers, so let's give a few young blokes a crack and see how we go.
Yeah, while they're not injured. And the last thing tonight, that's just it's great to see Justin Langer. I think the Wackers have got an absolute hell of a problem over in Perth, and it's sad to see what's going on. And Lachlan Stevens has obviously resigned from the Wacker coaching, but good that Justin Langer has taken on that role. I think that's a credit to a lot of people doing some sensible thing, and I think he's already talked in the media today about character coming first, which is essentially from the John Inverarity school of how we like to have blokes around the cricket team. And a good Queenslander in Stuart Law has been appointed interim batting coach for the Australian team, which will please a certain Queenslander like you, my friend, no end, I'm sure.
He will do well in that role. He did a really good job coaching Sri Lanka and coaching Bangladesh, and he'll do a really good job.
Bloke, another bloke who should have played a lot more cricket for Australia.
Indeed.
Anyway, mate, as always, thank you very much for joining us on the Armchair Selector, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thanks, Stephen. Cheers, Tuck.
See you, mate.